Okay, so I have the opening line where I say, hello guys, welcome, and that stuff. I mentioned today's topic, the GH5s camera, and if it's worth anything. Worth. It's fantastic. But I can't say it just yet. What kind of YouTuber would I be if I would lay all that you've seen for in the first minute? Why are you typing so rapidly? I'm just preparing my video, the stuff I'm going to say. About the GH5s camera? Yeah, about the GH5s camera. Do you remember the time when you got this camera? The day before you had to leave for the trip to Bratislava. And you were so nervous that this camera wouldn't arrive. I remember your facial expression when literally the day before you had to leave, the delivery guy came and landed you the camera. Christ the baby's Lord of all, angels wait. Me too. I remember walking through Vienna and Bratislava with my camera. It was the first time that I ever took my camera anywhere with me. And my hands were freezing because it was so cold outside. This whole trip it was snowing, and I remember we went to a coffee shop to warm ourselves because I couldn't even hold the camera. My whole hands were freezing. It was such an amazing trip. This rejoicing, free from sorrow, praises. I've never seen someone so excited about something in my entire life. I hope you remember that day. Thought you were crazy for spending that amount of money on something like GH5s, like, oh, micro four thirds, not even a full frame sensor. Why are you buying something like GH5s? And you bought it anyway. I did. I was able to shoot 4K at 60 frames per second and 1080p at 240 frames per second, which they weren't. Back then, but it's 2020. It's no longer 2018, so yeah, a lot of cameras can do that. Okay, I understand, but now tell me, because I'm curious, if it has to do anything with the newly announced cameras. You loved the camera back then, in 2018 and 2019. What has changed? Like, does it have to do anything with the newly announced cameras? Not at all. I mean, these cameras are good, I do have to mention, but my camera is amazing. It's still amazing. If I just take a look at the way average viewers look at the content, they still look at the content in 1080p. And can you imagine? They go crazy about the camera bodies and how every single year the new camera body is announced, and they yet buy those camera bodies, but they don't even try to invest in lenses. They have shitty lenses on amazing camera bodies, and their images are still looking like a crap. I can't understand that. And what about having all these complaints about high ISO, like your camera, Panasonic GH5s, does not have the high ISO, it's not a low light beast. Well dude, it actually has a dual ISO, dual native ISO, and for instance, why don't you maybe use some lights when you're lighting your subject? Like everyone just cranks up the ISO and then complains that it has a noise on the footage. Of course it's gonna have some noise, like, and when they complain about not having the IBIS on GH5s, like who would want to have the IBIS on a gimbal? Would you really sacrifice your footage for micro jitters that IBIS would produce? Yeah, that was a good one. This camera has pros and cons, like definitely, but I could say that like, the biggest pro for this camera is like the ease of use. It's so reliable. I could navigate through the menus blindfolded. I think the only camera that I could say that has that is Canon. That's why my switch from 600D to GH5s was very smooth. If someone wanted to buy a camera like Panasonic GH5s in 2020, would you recommend it? Recommend? I would rush them to do it. I'm a true advocate for this camera. I mean, you can tell. I have trust issues in my life, well, mostly with people, but I don't even trust my gear. Like, can you imagine, when I'm about to export a video, I always assume that there's gonna be some error happening right at the export. Or, for instance, when I'm editing a video, I always think that my software will crash any minute. That's why I Control S constantly to save myself. And you know what? With GH5s, I never had that issue. I never had this trust issues because I always knew that this camera would hold my back. It would never fail on me. And to knock on the wood, it still does. It still does its job. It didn't fail on me. Not once. I could always trust this camera. This is like the best thing that this camera has. Because it's so reliable. It's so reliable. It's a videographer's camera. Meant for videographers, and you were shooting wedding inside of a church with a 12 megapixel camera. My Canon was showing errors. My battery died somehow. I couldn't use it anymore, so I just had to step in with the GH5s and use it as the camera, as a photography camera. I was skeptical at first, 12 megapixels as a photography. What are the clients going to say? How are they going to print out the images that are only 12 megapixels big, or should I say small? And I was amazed. It was the best decision that I made. Those images from the church were actually some of my favorite images. The clients loved it, and the fact that I couldn't physically come closer because I had some moving restrictions. I had the 78mm lens, and with the 2x crop that GH5s has, I was able to get around 156mm. So again, something that was a zoom lens was simply because of 2x crop turned into a telephoto lens. So I was able to get like more in-depth shots with shallow depth of field. I can't believe it. I'm using a GH5s, which is primarily a videography camera, for photography purposes, for client jobs. So you're saying that even the photography part of this camera is actually solid? Solid. Really, really solid. I don't even remember last time that I used my old 600D, Canon 600D. So my genuine tip would be, before I leave, just do the videos that are a lot more positive than negative, because this is someone who you are in your real life. You're a lot more positive than you're negative. I see you smiling all the time when you're walking past me in this apartment, so I think you should do more videos like that. And less of the videos that are full of negative and drama that you did before. So yeah, this is only my personal preference and my tip for you, but you do as you wish.
And don't forget to subscribe.